Have you ever opened a genetics textbook and just felt completely overwhelmed? Like you're trying to crack some impossible code? You're definitely not alone. But here's the secret. Genetics is all about a simple pattern. And once you see that pattern, everything just clicks. So today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to solve this puzzle together.
I mean, it's the classic family dinner question, right? How did I get my mom's eyes but my dad's nose? Well, the answer comes down to three, believe it or not, really simple rules. And the person who figured it all out wasn't some scientist in a fancy lab. Nope, it was a monk more than 150 years ago working with pea plants in his garden. So stick with me, because by the end of this, you are going to get it, I promise.
So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to talk about why this stuff can feel so tricky. Then, we'll meet the man himself, Mendel and his peas. After that, we are going to break down his 3 laws, one by one. And at the very end, I'll give you a super simple plan to make sure you nail this stuff for any test. You ready? Let's dive in.
Okay, let's just be honest for a minute. You open the chapter, and it's like an alien language, right? You're getting hit with words like monohybrid cross, Punnett squares, and these bizarre ratios like 3:1 or 9:3 to 3:1. It is enough to make anyone's head spin and just feel totally lost.
Now here's the thing. This is the trap almost everybody falls into. You try to memorize it all. You try to cram the diagrams and the ratios, but it just doesn't stick, right? That's because you're missing the why behind it. Your brain is a pattern-finding machine. So our goal today isn't memorization. It's to understand the logic, to see the simple pattern. Once you see it, you can solve any genetics problem they throw at you.
So who was this guy? Meet Gregor Mendel. Back in the 1860s, this Austrian monk basically invented the entire field of genetics, right from his monastery garden. And why peas? Well, it was a brilliant choice. They grew fast, and they had these really clear, distinct traits. A plant was either tall or it was short. A seed was either round or it was wrinkled. There was no confusing middle ground, which made it perfect for spotting patterns.
And listen to this. This wasn't just a little side hobby. Mendel spent 7 years carefully breeding and tracking thousands and thousands of pea plants. And all that incredibly patient work paid off. He discovered 3 fundamental laws of how traits are passed down. And the most amazing part? These rules don't just work for peas. They work for all of us.
All right, let's get into law number 1. It's called the law of dominance. It all started with a simple experiment. Mendel took what he called a pure tall plant, one that always produced tall offspring, and he crossed it with a pure short plant. Pretty straightforward. So what do you think the new baby plants looked like? Were they kind of medium? Were they all tall, all short?
So to track all this, we need to use a little bit of genetic code. It's easy, I promise. We use letters to represent the different versions of a gene. So we'll use a capital T for the tall trait and a lowercase t for the short trait. Now, since the parents are pure, the tall one has 2 copies of the tall gene. So its genetic code, or its genotype, is big T, big T. And the short parent? You guessed it. Little t, little t. We good so far?
Okay, now listen close because this is the big moment. Each parent only passes down one of its letters, so the TT parent can only give a big T, and the TT parent can only give a little t. That means every single one of the new plants had the exact same genetic code, 1 big T and 1 little t. So what did they look like? This is what blew Mendel's mind. They were all tall. Every last one. It was like the short trait had just vanished into thin air.
This crazy result led Mendel to his first big idea, the law of dominance. And here's what it means in simple terms. When you have 2 different versions of a gene, like big T and little t, one of them can completely mask the other one. The one that shows up, we call dominant, and the one that gets hidden, we call recessive. So even though the plants had the code for both tall and short, that dominant T was just louder. It took over, and the little t just had to stay quiet in the background.
So this obviously leads to a really interesting question, which is what Mendel asked next for his second law. He thought, okay, but where did that short trait go? Is it just gone forever? To figure this out, he did something clever. He took those new tall plants, the TT ones, and he crossed them with each other.
And you know what happened? This is so cool. In that next generation, the short plants came back. They literally reappeared out of nowhere. And it wasn't just random. Mendel, being the careful guy he was, counted them, and he found this incredible pattern. For every 3 tall plants, there was 1 short plant. A perfect 3-to-1 ratio, over and over again. This was no accident. It was a huge clue.
So let's see how that works using this simple chart called a Punnett square. Since each parent is TT, they each have a 50-50 shot of passing on a big T or a little t. So we put one parent's options across the top and the others down the side. Now we just fill in the boxes. The first box gets a big T from both, TT. That's a tall plant. The next two boxes get one of each, TT. And since big T is dominant, these are also tall. But then look at that last box. It gets a little t from both parents, TT. That's the only way for that hidden short trait to finally show itself again.
So if you look at the genetic code, the genotype, you have a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. But if you just look at what the plants actually look like, the phenotype, you've got 3 tall plants for every 1 short plant. And there you have it. That's the famous 3 to 1 ratio explained. It's how a trait can skip a generation.
And this whole idea is Mendel's second law, the law of segregation. And all it really means is that in organisms, 2 copies of a gene get separated when they make reproductive cells, like sperm or an egg. So each egg or sperm only gets one of the 2 copies. It's basically a coin toss which one it gets. This is exactly why you might be able to roll your tongue, but maybe one of your parents can't. The gene was just hiding in them, waiting to be passed on to you.
All right, deep breath. We've got 2 laws down, 1 to go. The last one, the law of independent assortment, gets a little more complex. Because Mendel, of course, didn't stop there. He started wondering, well, what happens if I track 2 different traits at the same time? Say, not just plant height, but also seed shape, which could be round or wrinkled, and seed color, yellow or green.
He started the exact same way he did before, with purebreds. He took a plant that he knew only made round, yellow seeds. Those are both dominant traits, so its code is RRYY, and he crossed it with a plant that he knew only made wrinkled, green seeds, both recessive, so RRYY.
And just like the first experiment, all the first-generation offspring were identical. They all had the code RRYY, and they all looked dominant. They were all round and yellow. But here is the million-dollar question. Are the genes for shape and color linked? When these new plants reproduce, does the R for round always have to go with the Y for yellow? Well, his next experiment answered that question. When you map it all out, you get this absolutely beautiful, classic pattern, the 9 to 3 to 3 to 1 ratio. So what on earth does that mean? It means that for every 16 offspring, on average, you'll get 9 that are round and yellow, 3 that are round and green, 3 that are wrinkled and yellow, and only 1 that shows both recessive traits, wrinkled and green. This proves that the gene for shape sorts itself out completely independently from the gene for color.
And that, my friends, is the law of independent assortment. It just means that genes for different traits are inherited separately. Think of it this way. The gene for your eye color and the gene for whether your earlobes are attached or not, they're not a package deal. They get sorted independently. Now, there is one little asterisk here. This is true for genes that are on different chromosomes. If they're really close together on the same one, they sometimes do travel together.
Okay, so that's the theory. That's the logic. But how do we make sure this actually sticks in your brain for when you need it, like on an exam? Let's talk strategy. I'm going to give you a really simple plan to lock this in for good. We're going to do a 3-week plan. It's super straightforward. Week 1 is all about understanding. Don't even worry about speed, just get the logic. Physically draw out the Punnett squares for each law until you have that aha moment. Week 2 is practice. Now we build up some muscle memory. Do at least 10 single trait problems and 5 of the 2 trait problems. Get comfortable. Then week 3 is application. This is where you grab past exam papers and you put yourself to the test, under pressure.
And here are a few quick tips to grab every last point on a test. First, always define your symbols. Just write T equals tall, T equals short. It takes 2 seconds. Second, if a question is worth a few marks, draw a neat Punnett square. It shows your thinking. Third, finish your answer with a clear, simple sentence that directly answers the question. And finally, if you need an example, just stick with what you know. Mendel's P's are always your friend.
So, let's just recap it all one last time in the simplest way possible. 1. The law of dominance. One gene can hide another. 2. The law of segregation. The 2 copies of a gene split up. 3. The law of independent assortment. Different genes are passed down separately. That's it. That's the whole foundation.
So now that you see the pattern, you're going to start seeing it everywhere. Think about traits in your own family. Think about why some dogs in the same litter look so different. You now have the fundamental tools to start figuring that out. That puzzle of genetics, it isn't so impossible anymore. It's actually yours to solve.